Welcome back to Pre-Flight Playbook here at Newark Airport. We're in Terminal C in front of Vesper Tavern, and happy holidays to everybody. It's a beautiful December crisp day here in New Jersey, and I'm so honored to have as my guest today Joe Klecko, one of the greatest players in New York Jets history, one of the greatest defensive linemen in NFL history, and happy holidays and welcome, Joe.
It's good to be here, Big A.
Well, thanks again for coming, and let's take care of the most important thing right off the bat. You are up for the Centennial class in 2020, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we expect the next cut down on the vote to be down to 20 semifinalists sometime before Christmas.
Right.
Is it causing sleepless nights? Is it something you'd just be excited about if it happens, but because you've been out of the game a while, you've learned to, if it doesn't happen, you get over your disappointment quickly? I mean, how important is this basically for you right now?
Without a doubt, it's extremely important, because if you really think about it, I don't know the exact number, you may know it. There's 300 people that played in the NFL are in the Hall of Fame. That's about it. To be elected into that class of people, the guys you played with and your predecessors present, also, it's an honor and a half. The actual centennial year building up to it, with it having taken in 20 senior players, and again, it encompasses from the beginning to now.
Sure.
Okay, so there's a lot of guys that are involved with it. I think it's up to 200 people or something like that to choose from. It is getting exciting because, after I was moved to the senior side and left the regular voter side,
right, the modern era side.
The modern era
right.
side, it became a little bit less exciting. Just reason being is, you didn't know where it was going to go. So I never would get my excitement up. It has never been as much a possibility as it is now. To be elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame is every player's dream. I mean, it's every kid's dream to play in the NFL, which I accomplished, and then to be elected to the greatest players that ever played it really, the excitement, because it is a real thing now, I think, with 20 guys going in, it is a real possibility for myself. I think that the excitement builds and builds, especially after Thanksgiving at my house. All my family was up, and we always have Thanksgiving at my house. Everybody's inquisitive about it because it is a real thing now.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and again, the team themselves, the Jets, have been behind me with it and talk about it. So it's kind of exciting to see it happen.
When you hear players, some of the greatest offensive linemen in NFL history, John Hanna, Anthony Munoz, Dwight Stevenson, Joe DeLamielleure, when they get out there and say, Joe Klecko was one of the best, if not the best, defensive lineman I ever faced in my career, and these guys are Hall of Fame players themselves, that's just got to make you feel great. Regardless of obviously the Hall of Fame would be the icing on the cake, but to hear your peers who've been so honored, with their own, Hall of Fame careers and getting all those honors, that's still got to make you feel great.
Well, if there's one thing that really makes you, feel satisfied, the Hall of Fame is still a question mark. That will be a great satisfaction. But having guys like Hanna, Munoz, Dwight Stevenson, and so forth, have them all talk about you in that light with great players that played the game. Howie Long, Merlin Olsen, Joe Green. Just to be mentioned with those guys, it's a real honor. And that's pretty satisfying as a player because, I came from a era where, humility was a big part of the game. And you never thought you were as good as you were, really, until the Pro Bowls came around and people started talking about you. And, of course, the media coverage back then was nothing like it is now. And now that you see it, this is 30 years, 25 years later, you're hearing people talk about you that really are younger than my kids, about, possibility of the Hall. That's pretty exciting. So, there's a fulfilling part of that where, these people really know, or they've I've been talked about with people that they know, to where that's a big satisfaction.
What's your feelings, Joe, about the state of the game now, the officiating, how quarterbacks are being protected like never before? Listen, it's not two-hand touch, it's not flag football.
Exactly.
But it seems like if you get too close to the quarterback, if you breathe too heavily on the quarterback, you get that flag. How do you think you would have adapted to the rules?
Well, I would have been out of the game by now. I know that. I mean, I would take him down as hard as I could. I mean, I know we put a couple of guys out with busted rib quarterbacks. Gaston and I put poor, oh my Lord, I forget his name, Woodley out of Miami, and we put him out with broken ribs by, colliding together, and he was in the middle, And today we both would have been thrown out of the game, But I do believe there's a place for, relaxing for a quarterback, because listen, quarterbacks are the game. They really are. You look when you have Mahomes, Brady in a game, how exciting the game becomes,
Right.
And if you don't protect these, they're not, the guys hitting them, some of them are 350 pounds, and they're drilling them into the ground. The other guys who are very fast, that speed when they hit them, the contact is life-threatening. It
Sure.
really is, So to see them protect the quarterbacks, I agree with that. The problem with the refereeing is the referees don't know what they're doing. I mean, not that they don't know what they're doing as they're bad referees. The rules that they have are so vast in between what is pass interference, what's not, what's drilling a guy into the ground. And I believe that there's a lot of referees, there's a lot of them that have played the game, but there's a lot of them that have not played the game. And when you're involved in a game and like when you're really taking a quarterback and drilling him, you know what that is. But when a guy's hands land on the ground first, but you're on top of him, that's not drilling a quarterback into the ground, okay? Those are the kind of things that there's guys out there refereeing that have never played the game, especially at the high level, that can understand that. And that's a problem. I think the biggest problem, of course, it wasn't good in the beginning of the year, and it changed at the end of the year, was pass interference.
Right, absolutely.
Able to throw the red flag on it. So it's now changing. There were some of the calls in the beginning. New Orleans is been the scapegoat of two of the worst calls I've ever seen in the history of NFL football. But now they're trying to correct that because, again, the game is so fast, and they want to let the game play. But they want to make sure there's offense in the game, okay? And the defensive players at this time are allowed to get away with muggings. They really are, and that's a problem.
So, Joe, I was going to ask you, the rule now that, when you sack the quarterback, you can't land on top of him. You mentioned you got to get off to the side. Wouldn't that, for a 300-pound defensive tackle or a 285-pound defensive end, doesn't it take amazing body control to not only concentrate on trying to bring the quarterback down, but then, okay, I got to make sure that I land on the ground and not on top of him. How do you do that?
No, I agree. It's hard. It is. But on the other side of that, every guy that plays in the NFL is a tremendous athlete. Even if he's not 210 pounds and he's 350 pounds. They are great athletes, okay? They have the ability to control themselves to a point. And the thing about it is some of them don't get near the quarterback at all.
Yeah.
So the one time he does, he wants to make it a point,
Right.
and it winds up hurting him, But again, I believe watching the game, being a student of the game, being a player, you have to err on the side of caution here. Reason being is those guys that are in the backfield have to be protected.
You played on a defensive line that Marty Lyons, Mark Gastineau, Abdul Salam had one of the great nicknames in NFL history, the Sack Exchange, at a time that you had the Purple People Eaters, the Fearsome Foursome, Doomsday Defense in Dallas. I know it's hard to compare because schemes are different and you guys were asked to do different things.
No, we were the best.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, where do you rank? That definitely the best nickname.
Yes.
I think it was the best nickname. But You guys could play with anybody. That group that you had there.
Right. Well, I always I always pick the purple is the Rams. What was the Rams?
The Rams was Doomsday. Fearsome Foursome.
Fearsome Foursome.
Dallas was Doomsday.
I always said that the Fearsome Foursome and us were the two defensive lines really to be reckoned with. I mean, they had four guys: Mundy, Olsen,
Rosie,
and then the defensive end.
Jack Youngblood.
No. He was the one that was the always said he had more sacks. Anyway, but the Fearsome Foursome and the New York Sack Exchange, I always thought were to be equaled as far as being at the top of the best of those nicknames and the defensive line themselves.
Deacon Jones, you're talking about.
Yeah, Deacon Jones. Yes, Deacon Jones. Well, how could I forget his name?
Yeah, really.
So Deacon Jones, of course, made his name, and Deacon was bigger, stronger, faster than everybody out there at that point, and he was that good, But I think we could equal those guys easily. The other guys, I'll put them behind us.
So Mark Gastineau was the colorful one of the four of you.
To say the least, yes.
And I listen, Joe, you were the epitome of a blue collar, get down and dirty. I'm gonna beat your butt to get to the quarterback, or when you were playing inside, taking on a couple of blockers or whatever. And Mark is there, doing a dance as if he's at a wedding when he sacks a guy. And I know you probably have a million of them, but what's the one story about Gastineau that all these years later you would say really sticks out in your head?
Well, I guess it was the Rams game. We played the Rams at Chase Stadium, and Mark had it was Vince Ferragamo, and Mark had sacked Ferragamo for a loss, and he got up and he really started going through his dance, and Jackie Slater went after him. And Slater went after him, and Mark didn't know what was happening. He kept his dance going, and then all of a sudden, both benches cleared, okay? And it was at that time the largest fine ever handed out by the NFL, but till to this day, it was the most people involved in a fight on the field.
Really?
Okay? And then really what happened was we looked at the film later, and everybody was on the field and matching up with guys and grabbing each other and pushing each other around. And Mark was over on the bench. He got out of the melee real quick, so that was a funny one.
I was going to say, considering how some of you guys felt about Gastineau, maybe you were teaming up with the Rams to.
No, the one thing that I always cared about totally was winning.
Right.
It didn't matter to me what Mark did on the field, when it came time to winning, And if we could win, I wanted to wear a Super Bowl ring in the worst way, And that was what we were there for. So what he wanted to do with that, I kind of came to grips with, And as long as it didn't hurt the team, that's what I was worried about the most. And having him out there doing that, knowing it was creating more of an influence for him on the other team, he actually helped us win.
Now, did you overlap with Namath at all?
No, Joe actually, the year Joe left and went to L.A., I actually came to the Jets. Okay. He left in '76 at the end of the year.
Right. He got there in '77.
Yeah.
So when anybody looks at your stats on NFL.com, they see 24 and a half sacks. And they go, 24 and a half sacks. What they don't realize is the sacks did not become an official stat until 1982. And from 77 to 81, you had 50 and a half sacks, which gives you, if my math is right, 75 for your career. You had 20 and a half sacks in 1981. You were the Defensive Player of the Year. First team All-Pro as a defensive end, 1985. You're playing nose tackle at that point. You were first team All-Pro. Do you think the fact that the NFL didn't count sacks as an official stat, and when any of these voters have been looking up, okay, Joe Klecko's a candidate now, let's see what his sacks are, do you think enough of them know or take the time to research and go, well, let's see what he had his first 5 years of his career, and basically are not aware of what you did during that time period?
Yeah, that was part of it. And, someone had mentioned, too, about, it was talking to one of the voters and why I wasn't in the regular class to be voted in. And one of the voters had asked, it was a player, I won't mention him because he's a friend. And, he said, why have you not voted for him? He goes, well, what is he? Is he a defensive end, a tackle, or a nose tackle? And my friend said, does it really matter? He dominated every position he played, And it was a good thing to hear. But I also believe that because, especially in 82 when I had all those sacks and everything like that, it is not even a stat that was ever kept. I believe it wears on people's minds because they don't look into it as a Jet fan. They looked into it as, a writer or whoever who's voting from the West Coast or so forth that really didn't care about it. And do I think it affected? I think it affected it tremendously. Also, the other thing about it is we all have them, the VHS tapes from way back when, and I had transferred them to a disc. And when you look at the games on television when we played, and how comical it is, and even the graphics and everything and what it's like. And people never really, like on the West Coast, knew even who we were as the New York Jets because we weren't winning. Nowadays, a kid coming out of college, what size his shorts are. You know what I mean? And back then, we didn't get the recognition with other people besides the New York area people because they didn't care. Again, they were looking at the leaders of divisions, Super Bowl champions, and we weren't those things. So I think those things as a culmination were all part of why I never got much of a glance about my recognition because I remember I made the Pro Bowl 3 different times. I didn't make the Pro Bowl, and I missed it by 1 vote. Where there was those early years when we weren't playing that well, and nobody knew who we were. So that would have made a big difference.
And you were the first defensive player to make the Pro Bowl at 3 different positions, which, when you think about that, that's pretty amazing. But, the Jets haven't won a Super Bowl since the 1968 season. It's been over 50 years. They've been to 4 AFC championship games since then, and the first of those 4 you played in. You missed almost the entire 82 regular season. You had surgery on the patella tendon, and you came back in the same season, which now is completely unheard of, and it probably attests to the fact that you're nuts. But you came back for the playoffs that year.
I know I am.
So tell me what it was like. 1982 AFC Championship game, Jets in Miami. It's pouring all night. You walk into the Orange Bowl figuring, okay, Shula's got the field covered, that the field will not be in such bad shape. And you walk out there for warm-ups and you see, oh my God, he didn't cover the field, and it's muddy and it's like a quagmire, and how are you going to get your footing? And the Jets were a much faster team in those years, so it was definitely to Miami's benefit to slow you guys down. How disappointing was it just initially to walk on that field and go, this is not the conditions, this is not optimal conditions for any NFL game, no less a conference championship game?
Well, the one thing you have the opportunity to here is to analyze it, 30 years later, okay? So, but when we walked out on the field, that really wasn't too much in our mind about, oh, God, he didn't cover the field, because really when you think about it, you're in the same situation as they are, you know what I mean? And we were a bigger, tougher, stronger team. Nobody ran a football on us and stuff like that, and they were going to try that. That wasn't going to work. Our downfall in that game was our quarterback.
Right.
Richard had 3 interceptions.
That's Richard Todd.
I
think he had 5 in that game, didn't he?
I don't know how many he had. But I know A.J. Dewey became the king of Miami.
And wasn't A.J. Dewey his college teammate at Alabama?
At Alabama, yes.
He made him even more famous than he was.
Exactly. But as the game went on, you finally realized that we were in a bad situation because as fast as Wesley was, it could run by people, and of course as good as Freeman was by making people miss, it wasn't working, So you knew this was going to be a low-scoring game if it wasn't for defensive scores, and then we were going to be in a real dogfight in this. Because if you really look at it, I mean, the Redskins, when they played the Dolphins in that Super Bowl, Riggins ran all over them, okay? Yeah. That would have never happened with us. You know what I mean? It was a fact. I think we led the league that year or second against the run, okay? So being that he didn't cover the field, Was it to our detriment? Yeah. Was it smart on his part? I never questioned about it. I've seen him many times, Coach Shula, after that, and I never questioned him about it. But the thing about it was, it was a bad way for us because, again, took away all our speed. But when I came out, when you came out to play that game, all I was caring about the three guys sitting in front of me. I was going to, try and destroy them. That's all I cared about.
So I know that then and now you're good friends with Richard Todd. Have you ever just sat around in all the years since and go, Richard, 5 interceptions in a championship game. What the heck happened?
Yeah, matter of fact, I was going out to Augusta to watch the Masters, and Richard worked in Atlanta. And him and I had got together and had dinner with a friend of mine, and we sat down after and had some drinks and stuff and carried on about it, And he said, he of course regrets what happened, and he didn't fly back with us that night on the plane. And the reason because he had family in Miami and stuff like that.
It's not like you wouldn't let him on the plane.
No, And so I said to him after, I said, are you telling people that you stayed back? You didn't want to get on a plane with us coming back, But no, Richard's good-hearted about it, and Richard's one of the nicest fellas you ever want to meet in your life, except for that day.
Yeah, it's unfortunate he picked that day to have the worst game of his career.
Yeah.
With all that you accomplished, Joe, the fact that you never got to play in a Super Bowl and experience that. Now, I know your son Danny did get to play in a Super Bowl, and all fathers it's at some point will live through their son's athletic accomplishments. Maybe the fact that you were an athlete, I don't know if that means more or less than somebody who didn't play, whose son then achieves. But I know how proud you were of him and that he has a ring. But the fact that you don't have your own ring, how much does that, I can't say all these years later that you think about it, but when you did retire, it had to be a big regret.
Oh, there's no doubt. And, of course, I've talked to a lot of the players, in my same situation that have great careers and played in the NFL, and they're in the same boat. I talked to Ron Jaworski about it in length, because the Eagles were in with Oakland in 1980, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
In New Orleans, and I said, you guys had a real chance. He goes, yeah, we were chomping at the bit, and they got crushed.
Yeah, they did.
And here Ron Jaworski had a great career, and he never played in the Super Bowl. And there's a lot of guys like there, but is it a hole in your heart? Yeah, it is. It actually is, because when everybody talks about any great players and so forth, like they talk about who played in this Super Bowl, that Super Bowl. They don't talk about, we happened to win that game in the third game of the season in 1987. Nobody's doing that.
That's right.
They're talking about, the Super Bowls through 28, maybe through 50, and they're always talking about the players who were involved, and you could have been part of that, And it's funny, you talk about my son Dan, who was with the Patriots for a while, and he actually won one with the Colts. And he came home one day after receiving his ring sometime in June, and he was in the house, and he was standing in front of me, and he had something in his hand, and he slapped it into my hand, and he said to me, Dad, he goes, by the way, that's a Super Bowl ring if you've never seen one.
Oh, nice.
It's very, very hard to deal with your son having them, and you don't. So, yeah.
How much do you follow the game now? Are you a big fan, or?
Yeah, I'm a very big fan of the game because I actually do turn the TV off though. I watch the TV for the chess game. I like to watch it's hard sometimes though because you don't get to see when they're sending in nickel or dime or regular. You don't get to see that because the camera gets away, and then you have to pick it up as they come back. But as the game goes on, you learn who's in the nickel, who's in the dime, and who's, when the three linebackers are in there. And then I like to watch the schemes that the defensive coordinators put together on certain quarterbacks because certain quarterbacks handle it very well, which we know. And then there's other ones that don't. And the younger ones always get flustered at certain times, And it winds up being a fun game to watch because you see those kind of things,
Just to remind you, you're watching Pre-Flight Playbook here at Newark Airport Terminal C at Vesper Tavern, and once again, happy holidays. And it's kind of the calm before the storm here, Joe, in the airport. It's a little quiet today, but I would imagine in 10 or 12 days, that it's going to be wall-to-wall people. So.
Holiday rush, you know. One time I stay away from airports, I agree.
But so, you know, before we get into your Academy Award-worthy movie career that you had, I just want to talk about, you know, a huge topic with retired players is, you know, the state of their health and how their bodies have held up after playing. You played about a dozen years, and I know you've had about a dozen surgeries. How are you feeling today, and what body parts are still working pretty good for you?
Well, I could compete with a bionic man right now. You know, I've had knee replacement, shoulder replacement. I've had multiple surgeries on my knee and my shoulder. I've had 7 vertebrae in my back done. I have had vertebrae in my neck, back, and front done. It's been a little bit of an arduous situation year to year trying to recover from all these. But, you know, it's tough to say because, you know, a lot of people talk to me and say to me, you know, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it? You know, when you come out of college and you don't know nothing, you really don't know anybody, it's not too hard of a decision, you know. But as you get older, you know, and I've been around a long time now, and these surgeries, you know, they wear on you a little bit, you know, but I'm not one to complain about it. I'm not going to complain about it because, you know, the recognition we get as players in society, you know, helps you out in life,
Sure.
You know, so that's a big benefit to what we do too. But I just wish that the NFL they'd help out a little bit more with the guys because, you know, there's a lot of guys out there who are hurting really bad, and they could use the help. I know John Riggins, his wife, is heading up him and Dick Butkus and John Riggins himself are heading up a group that are looking for pension parity for us. And I believe that is something that is realistic because if you look at the dollar bills that are being made in the NFL and what are being contributed to the pre-93 players, it's pretty sad because, you know, if you adjust it against all of the other professional sports, we are way behind. You know, there's a lot of, you know, I think Detroit auto workers who have better pensions than us.
What about the health insurance? Do you still have an NFL-sponsored health insurance plan, or are you on your own once?
No. I believe when we were playing that you had it for a year. I believe the players nowadays have it for 5 years after they leave. But no, I mean, and I can understand that, you know, once you're a player, that help you adjust to the real world. But no, there's no contributions that much from the NFL. The NFL Players Association does contribute to joint replacement one time, which is a good thing. Guys who don't have the money to pay for that, you know, they pay a certain amount of money for it, which is a good thing. And there's a health factor to where a lot of hidden things where they have seminars across the country where you can go as a player and be checked out for multiple things, whether it be heart, lung, you know, joint, and all that. And that is sponsored by the NFL, which is a good thing for a lot of guys who do need that. But as far as the guys who are desperate, who are really lounging in poverty almost,
Right.
The money being made out there by these big guys, I mean, it's not much to contribute to these guys, and I think it would be a big deal.
Without naming names, if there is even a name to mention here, have any of your former teammates, or have you been involved in when you find out that a former teammate is really having a hard time financially and needs to get health care, have you guys stepped up and either helped them out financially or got them to the right place?
Well, Marty Lyons and myself have done that for a few guys and stuff, but there's not too many guys that come across and ask for it. There's a lot of pride involved,
that's right.
you know, and you know, you don't find out until it's too late sometimes, you know, and you'll hear it from someone that didn't get the word out or they didn't get the word out. But, you know, it's a great thing when you can help your fellow players, you know, to live comfortably. I mean,
Sure.
And I'm not talking about, you know, over the top stuff, you know, everyday essentials. And it's great to be able to help guys like that.
And also just to get the medical care. So when you're saying live comfortably, I mean, you're referring to financially, but also just so you can function on a day-to-day basis without being in pain or not being able to
Well,
move.
that's a big deal, and people don't understand what that is. It really is. Knee, back, neck, all those things. It's a contributing factor to a mental deficiency, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but it is a contributing factor to people mentally. And that's why you see the CTE problems where you see guys committing suicide and stuff. And I'm not saying it's all contributed to that, but you wind up with enough injuries and you clearly can't take care of it or go to a pain management situation because you don't have the money to do it. That can put you in a dire strait. It really can. And that's the one thing I wish they would help.
The CTE, all the information that's come out over the years and how maybe the Players Association is trying to help educate today's players, but is it something that you're concerned about as you get older? I mean, who knows how many collisions? I mean, forget about documented concussions, but just the collisions that you had.
They talk about defensive and offensive linemen have a minor car collision every time they hit. You know what I mean? And people don't understand that. It really is a tremendous blow. Do you worry about it? I really don't worry about too much physically, and that I've had a lot of things done to me. But I don't worry about it. I can't worry about it. Worrying doesn't help it, okay? But trying to improve it helps it, seeing if you can improve your health working out and stuff. But as far as a lot of guys out there, there are guys that do need help, and that's the thing I wish that people would understand more, you know what I mean? Because, and listen, and, you'll see some guys go on Twitter and places like that and talk about how much pain they're in or something like that. And you'll hear a wise guy on the other end, yeah, but nobody made the money you did and all that. Well, when we played, I was talking about it earlier. My first contract in the NFL as an NFL player was $21,000. That was it. And people go, what? Yeah, and the money the guys are making today, they deserve it. They're putting their body on the line. The owners are making that money, and I think they deserve it. But the problem of it is a lot of people don't identify the problems. They want to see the glory. They want to see the quarterback.
Sure.
But they don't identify with the problems. And I think the problems exceed the good parts.
You and I are about the same age, and I know there are times that I'm trying to remember something that happened 3 days earlier, and I'm going, oh my, So I'm sure you're going through the same thing, and
yes.
Most people our age do that. But I don't have to think to myself, well, can I not remember something because of playing football for 12 years? And I'm assuming that you have some of those moments too where you have a hard time thinking of something that you're trying to remember. But does a thought go through your mind, is it just because of the age I'm at, or is it because of what I did for a living?
There's different thoughts on that, and there's also study on it that NFL players today are living longer than they did, some people say. And, the concussion syndromes that you have, do those things contribute to the deterioration of your brain? Well, I went through a study with a gentleman. I don't even know if I should mention his name, but I'm going to. His name is Raymond Dominion. He invented the MRI. And I went to him with a study he's doing for military guys who have had the IUD concussions and so forth, and football players. And he's doing it for nothing. He's doing it on his own. He's 80-some years old, one of the most intelligent guys I think I've ever been in a room with. And he has found out that a lot of this stuff is contributed to the lack of cerebral fluid flow to the brain. And you're not allowed to submit in the brain CTE concussion plan, no X-rays or MRIs.
Is that
It's
right?
a court order in the concussion syndrome in the lawsuit they have, and I don't understand how that is. And of course, I don't make us think about it because you can't do nothing about it because there are powerful people behind it. And if they would submit MRIs, they would see so many other different things. And it's funny how they don't allow that. And I think it's one of the most crucial things that would be involved in considering whether you have any damage or not.
You and I, talk every couple months or whatever, and it just seems that every time I say, Joe, how you doing? You go, well, I had neck surgery 2 weeks ago, or I had this done, or I had that done.
Yeah.
Is it hard sometimes? I don't mean to make light of it. It's just
No, it's fine.
you know. But is it hard sometimes to get out of bed in the morning because your knees hurt or your back hurts, or
Nobody knows that more than my wife,
Yeah,
so,
I can imagine.
but yeah, there's times you got to get the fluids flowing before you get out of bed sometimes and stuff, especially like after a surgery, you know what I mean? Because, the rehab part, the part where you have to adapt, like when you get knee surgery, that part that's in there has to adapt to your body and so forth. Shoulder, the same thing, And yeah, it does, it's extremely hard. And for me it was tough because I had 4 majors, replacements in neck and back in 2 years, And I have a good friend of mine who's an MD, and he said, "I'm glad you're good with anesthesia because there would have been a problem." But I do find at times it's tough to get out of bed. Is it because I'm 66 years old? Again, like you said about the memory loss or the short-term
I thought I was
memory.
about the same age as you. You're way older. No, I'm just kidding.
But it does get to you, yeah.
Yeah. So let's transition here for the last topic that we'll talk about. For those who don't know, you're looking at a man who was just an incredible actor. And I'm going to look up here in my notes just so I don't forget. Off the top of your head. Okay. So you were part of Burt Reynolds. I don't know if it was an ensemble cast that he had a lot of the same people in his movies, but he took a liking to you because you were like an everyday Joe, a truck driver. That was one of your side jobs early on in your career. But you were in Smokey and the Bandit 2, Cannonball Run, and Heat. And when I once asked Joe if you're going to pick an actor to play you in a movie in the Joe Klecko story, who is it? You said it was John Wayne, which is perfect. So tell me about how your relationship with Burt Reynolds actually got started, and how much fun was it to be in those movies?
Well, first it was a blast. And it was funny how we got to know each other because I had an article in Sport Magazine where I was on the cover and I was holding up a tractor and trailer in the back. And Burt seen it.
Was it one of those little toy tractor trailers?
No, but it wasn't a real me holding it up. And Burt seen it and had called the Jets to get my phone number, and they did. And my mother was babysitting our kids, and she said to me when I got home, she said, "Joe, Burt Reynolds called and he wants you in a movie." I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Mom, did you recognize the name, who it was?" He goes, "No, he did. He's going to call you back later." So that's how it happened. Burt called me back, and Hal Needham was doing Smokey and the Bandit 2 at that time, and they offered me a part, and they wanted to have the truck I drove in the movie. So we put the truck in the movie, yeah, and everything like that. So the company I was with got their truck in the movie, and it was fun because it was right up my alley. But then meeting him, and then when he came to the city, he was doing a movie called Paternity at the time. I was with him in the city, and he wanted me to do a special part there, and I couldn't do it because it was in the season. But I became friends with him, at his house and so forth. And he's an athlete lover. He
played
Florida State. He was a big contributor to the college and everything like that.
Yeah.
And he just loved athletes. So I did it with Terry Bradshaw. Joe Green was in one of them. So it was a lot of fun to do.
Now I know I saw all those movies. I can't quite remember how big a speaking part you had, but you did have some lines.
I practiced for weeks.
I was going to say, was that harder than the playbook?
No, it was actually easier because, they can hold up cue cards for you. They can do whatever you want, and they weren't real tough lines. The best part about it was when I got out of the truck and Smokey and the Bandit, I went back and I crushed Jackie Gleason's badge. He was a sheriff that was chasing Burt, and I got out and I crushed his badge, and it was a real badge. So when I went into the window to crush it, I couldn't do it right away because I didn't expect it to be that hard.
Yeah.
So the director cut. He said, "Okay, Joe, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut, we're going to reach in, and then we're going to take the badge and we're going to crush it for you. And you reach in, and when you pull it out, it'll be crushed." I said, "Like hell you will." I says, "You put the badge back on him, I'll crush it." It's one of them ego things, of course, So I reached in, we did the scene, I reached in, and I crushed the badge. And I walked out, and it was a real slow-forming scene, and Jackie Gleason happens to say, I think the circus must be in town. It was a great line. I walked back to my truck. I got in the truck. My hand was bleeding.
Did he ad-lib that line?
No. No. That was what he was supposed to say.
Oh, okay.
And I got back in the truck. My hand was bleeding.
Oh, no.
I crushed the badge, but I had to go get a stitch in my hand after. So, it was one of the macho things I had to do,
That's really funny. Who else? What other actors besides Jackie Gleason?
Well, one of the nicest guys that I met on the set, and when I was doing a Cannonball Run, I would go in the morning and go work out real early, like 6 o'clock, and come back, and they had a food truck that followed the crew around, and this guy could make food like a 5-star restaurant, So I'm eating steak and eggs for breakfast. That was great. Every morning, Dean Martin would come out, and he was an early riser, and he would come out and sit with me and have coffee and whatever he was eating or whatever. One of the nicest guys I ever met in my life, and a truly intelligent man. But, Dom DeLuise, really nice guy. Jamie Farr, of course, Bert himself. But one of the only guys that I didn't get along with and didn't like was Roger Moore, the guy that played James Bond.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I don't know what it was about his attitude, but he thought he was way above others. And you know what? The other guys on the set didn't like him either, So it was pretty good. But the guy I got along most was a guy named Jack Elam. Jack Elam was a bit part player. He played in Gunsmoke. He was the guy that always acted like he had a bad eye. Well, Jack Elam and I would send a grip to go to the bank every day and play liar's poker all day long. And it was one of the nicest guys, again, that I got to meet.
I had asked you before, you would have been a natural in The Longest Yard.
Oh, yeah.
With Bert. I mean, somewhere along there you would have probably beat the crap out of somebody in the movie.
The first one he did, I didn't know him. That was way before my time.
Oh, okay.
And then when he did the
remake,
second one, that was Adam Sandler's movie.
Right.
So it wasn't his movie.
Oh, so the first one was before you.
Right. So basically, in the first one I didn't make it in time. I was too young. And then the second one, he didn't have any juice basically to put whoever he wanted in the movie. He was in it because Adam Sandler wanted him in it. But that's why I didn't make the second one.
So I don't know if you can remember this, but were any of these movies that you appeared in released during the football season? And did the players give you a hard time about it?
Yeah, they were not. They were not, yes. And the thing about it is the one, he offered me a part, in Sharky's Machine that I would have took a lot of grief over, and I knew I would have had been a lot of fights over it. But no, they weren't released during the season. But when I got back to camp, my guys would rib me about it, and then it was kind of over after that.
But I mean, that's a pretty cool thing. It's an honor. I mean, anytime you get in a movie, but for him to ask you back 2 more times.
Well, when you think about it, I walk in my house and my mom says, Burt Reynolds called, and this is in 1981, This is when there's not that much going on out there as far as understanding movies and stuff. And here it is, a guy that is, at them days, he was everything in Hollywood, So it was pretty cool.
Now, anybody who's watching this can see that Joe has, a ton of personality. Any thought after you finished playing football?
Oh, this is the best, yes. After I got done playing, I figured, I'm going to try and get in New York, acting career, So George Firth was a guy who, again, a bit player who was in Cannonball Run. I'd get friends with him on the set, and he had an acting school in New York City. So I said to him, I said, George, listen, how about when I get back to the city, you and I have lunch one day, maybe we can hook up and go to your acting school or something like that. So him and I went to lunch one day in the city, and he was saying to me, he goes, Joe, you're a really good football player, aren't you? I said, yeah. I said, people say I'm okay, all that. He goes, no, you're really good, aren't you? It's something you should really concentrate on. I said, hold on. I said, are you telling me I'm not invited to your acting school? And that's the way it happened. So
that's really
I gave up my acting career right there.
And, Bert passed away last year. But over the years, every now and then, I don't know how recently, if you were in L.A. or he was in New York, you would make an effort.
He didn't travel that much. And the biggest thing that came along was email. So we were able to contact each other and talk about it with email. I hadn't seen him probably in 10 years, but again, just a great guy.
At any point, and we'll finish up with this, would you like to get back involved? I know you're a very successful businessman, and you're always running around doing things. At any point, would you like to get a more of a formal or defined role, maybe working for the Jets? I mean, God knows they can use all the help they can get, to give some input into some things that are going on there.
Would I like to do it? You know, I like challenges, you know, and I like stepping into storms. The one thing about business I like is the action. I like the action of business. You're always bidding and doing things and getting work done and getting work accomplished and stuff like that. And of course you have your feelings about football because you feel that it's something that you know pretty much about. If the Jets were ever to entertain that with me, would I think about it? Yes, without a doubt. Reason being is it's your first love. Listen, how many guys played in the NFL are wrapped up in the NFL the rest of their life? 90% of them. They really are. I mean, I'm wrapped up in my family. I'll have to say that. You know, my grandkids, my kids. But you know, if there was ever something that it came across, you know, that the Jets wanted to talk to me about, I'd listen, no doubt about it, because it's something that you don't shy away from. It's almost like when I started in the construction business back when, you know, I was a little fearful of it. You know, reason being, I didn't know that much. I learned. Now it's a whole different story. But the thing about it is that's one thing I know about.
That's right. Have the Jets evolved into an organization that welcomes back its former players for events, you know, with open arms?
Yeah, you know, they've graduated every year to that, more and more and more, to where you see more of the ex-players around, helping them out, doing things like that. And for that reason, they have been very proactive with all of the alumni, which is a good thing.
That's good. Well, I think we'll wrap up on that note. Thank you so much for watching Pre-Flight Playbook here at Vesper Tavern at Newark Airport, and to everybody who's just got off a flight, I hope you had a great trip. If you're getting on a plane right now, have a very safe trip, and happy holidays to everybody. Happy holidays to you, my guest Joe Klecko. Hopefully, next time we speak, you'll be further along in the process towards being part of this centennial class for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and my best to you and your family.
Oh, Garrett, a good time being with you. You're a great guy, and really, Merry Christmas to everybody. Also, and tonight, bet the Jets.